I'd like to welcome everyone to our Fireside Chat here in the village of Round Lake Beach. I'm Mayor Rich Hill, and tonight our guest with us is Congressman Bob Dold. Appreciate you being here, Congressman.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Congressman Bob Dold is currently in his second term during serving the people of Illinois' 10th Congressional District. A native of Northern Illinois, Bob was born at Evanston Hospital and grew up with his three sisters in the same house where his parents still reside. Like his father, Bob graduated from New Truro High School. Prior to being elected to Congress in 2010, Bob served as president of his family's business, Rose Pest Solutions, the oldest pest management company in the United States, which serves families and businesses throughout the 10th District and beyond. During his first term, he served on a prestigious committee on financial services and amassed a record as one of the most effective, independent, and bipartisan members of the 112th Congress. He was deemed the most effective freshman in Congress at advancing his legislative agenda. He serves on the Committee on Ways and Means, which he is the Chief Tax Writing Committee of the United States Congress. Serving on the committee gives the 10th District an even larger role in advancing legislation to grow the economy, protect our environment, and ensure the safety and security of America's homeland, as well as that of our greatest ally, Israel. Bob has served on the board for the Boys and Girls Club of Lake County and volunteered his time as a board member for the Northeast Illinois Council for the Boy Scouts of America. Bob has also been active with the Honor Flight Program, which is committed to ensuring that those who have bravely served this country in World War II have the opportunity to travel to Washington, D.C. and visit the World War II Memorial. Bob, welcome.
Rich, great to be with you, Mayor.
And tonight we have an esteemed panel of our village interns for this year, and I'll turn it over to our Human Resource Director, Nancy Steen.
Thank you, Mayor Hill, and I'm going to let the interns introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Yurzette Villa. I will be attending Northwestern in the fall. I intend to study political science.
I'm Matthew Kilbane. I'm at Lake Forest College. I'm going to be a senior, and I'm studying English literature.
Hello, my name is Grant Orlowski. I'm going to be a sophomore at the University of Illinois studying civil engineering.
My name is Jake Burkhardt. I go to Lake Forest College. I will be a junior in the fall, and my major is economics.
My name is Thomas Furlong. I'm going to be a sophomore at the University of Illinois, and I am studying computer engineering.
Well, great. Well, we appreciate you all coming down tonight and serving as our panel for asking questions. And I'll turn it back over to you, Nancy.
Yurzette, if you would like to start.
This question is for both Congressman Dold and Mayor Hill. Political officials, whether elected or appointed, are under constant scrutiny and pressure to act. Additionally, there are other stress factors such as family, travel, and tragedies such as Orlando. What motivates you to continue your public service, and how do you handle the stress associated with your service?
I'm happy to start off on that one, Mayor. And well, first, let me just say it's an honor to be able to represent the people of the 10th Congressional District. It's the greatest honor of my life, but I am blessed with a saint for a wife. I have three children, a 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 9-year-old, and she creates a sense of normalcy at home, because those are some very real stresses that people understand in terms of a day-to-day household. And when you say, why in the world would you, the question I often get from people is, why in the world would you ever want to run for Congress? I mean, it's pretty tough to get things through, but why would you ever want to do it? And honestly, when I look at my children, and I wonder, will they inherit a country as strong as the one that I inherited from my parents? Will they have the same number of opportunities that I've had or that others have had? For me, that's the reason why you step up and serve. It's not easy, because again, in a district such as ours, which is actually one of the most competitive districts in the entire country, there are obviously those that don't agree with you on everything. But I do believe that the path forward and what keeps me going is the idea that we agree on a heck of a lot more than we disagree on. And if we can actually come together to move things forward, to make life easier for families that are struggling to get by, because honestly, those conversations that are happening in Round Lake Beach, that are happening in Waukegan and North Chicago, in Des Plaines, in Northbrook, are very similar. And that's, in essence, the costs are going up, and it's harder for me just to get by. And so whether it be the cost of food, the cost of higher education, the costs of insurances, the uncertainty around retirement. Those are things that are making it more difficult. And I do believe that the path forward is to try to come together to help solve those problems. It's not without stress, but I do believe the reward is going to be outweigh the stress at the end of the day.
I find it very enlightening and a lot of fun, you know, being mayor. I spend a lot of time at it. I get involved in a lot of different activities, but I can see the consequences of what we do and the improvements that happen in our community and how it affects the residents. And that really goes to the heart of the matter. No, technically, you know, your heart. You feel so good about it. And even though you do have the stressful times, we try to keep those as low as possible, having good plans in place, whether it be financial plans in case something goes askew, make sure we build up a fund balance. The police department has several different plans in place for different things that may or may not happen. I work with the fire department also. We have a railroad line that goes right through town that, heaven forbid, there could be a tragic event there with a derailment. But again, we have a lot of plans in place, so if something does happen, it'll be taken care of promptly and with solid, good people. And that's what probably reduces the stress the most. I have a very good team here, very good staff. They all do wonderful, and it makes me look good. I have a good board to work with. We work together professionally. We don't agree on every issue, as Bob just said about the congressman also, but we work together to get things done. And we don't call each other names or yell at each other or throw hissy fits or anything like that. So it's a lot of fun doing the job. And so I'll keep on doing it as long as the people around Lake Beach will have me.
This question is for both Congressman Dold and Mayor Hill. There seems to be a lot of media attention on tensions between citizens and law enforcement at the federal, state, and local levels. What role does the Congress and the mayor have in supporting, guiding, and perhaps regulating law enforcement?
Well, we're very directly involved at the mayor level. We have the police chief here who operates our police department. He has a couple of deputy chiefs and so forth. And while there is a lot of controversy on TV, I think when you see one or two incidents, you think it's around nationwide. It's not. It's happening here or there. There are some issues, absolutely, and there's some bad officers out there. But I'd say the vast majority, if not 99 or 99.5% of the officers are good officers. They work hard. They care about the community. And I will support them until I'm shown that they were wrong. There are so many times where someone that has done something wrong tries to cast it on someone else by making allegations or saying he roughed me up. Well, sometimes when you're taking a suspect down, you have no choice but to be rough with them. Before I came here, there was a video down in Texas where a guy was running after a car chase and they had to be taken down. There's no other way to stop the man. And it's unfortunate, but some people will not obey the laws and they've got to be dealt with. And I hope the citizens understand that. And again, some of our officers have made, not our officers luckily here, but officers across the country have made significant mistakes. And when you have split-second decisions to make, and I'm not even talking a full second, you got a quarter second to make a decision. Try that sometime when your life's in danger. It's not easy. So I give all my credit to the officers and I'll back them 100%.
With regard to, from a federal perspective, I mean, I think that most of the issues in terms of legislation and the like are really more down at the local level, and I would certainly concur with the mayor that the vast majority of our first responders each and every day get up and try to figure out how they can make our community a safer place. Yeah. Oftentimes they're living in the community and they're the ones that frankly, whether it be the police or the fire, that are protecting us each and every day. Now, there are those situations where you find, like we saw in the city of Chicago, where there were instances where they were, wrong, plain and simple. But the vast majority of law enforcement officers and those first responders are doing just an incredible job to keep us safe. So what I want to make sure that we're doing is we want to make sure that we're including them in our community. And that frankly, certainly as young people, I would encourage you to get to know local law enforcement, get to understand what it is that they're doing each and every day. Some of the federal legislation would have been really more about enabling municipalities to perhaps get body cameras. Because again, those types of things we believe potentially could be protecting officers going forward. So that we can actually see what the interaction is on a particular situation. But ultimately, the more local they are, the better it is going to be.
All right, Congressman Dold, what would motivate young people to become a police officer when they see law enforcement officials consistently under attack in the media and laws restricting their ability to enforce the law?
Well, I would say that what would encourage young people to get engaged in law enforcement is by spending some time with law enforcement and understanding what it is that they do each and every day. And we've got law enforcement, great law enforcement officers in local communities all around the 10th Congressional District, and that would welcome the opportunity to spend some time with some young people, to have them shadow them or to do those types of things. And so honestly, those that want to give back, that want to help protect a community, that have been part of the very fabric of that community, I think there could be some very good things as to why you might want to go in that route, or go into another first responder, into the fire department or something along those lines. But I've had some really great experiences with some of the police forces, especially as we look at the heroin epidemic that's going on, the work that they're doing to try to, again, help make the community a safer place and to help save lives. And one of those instances is the situation with regard to naloxone being carried by first responders. And the number of lives that those first responders have saved since, not this last Christmas, but the Christmas before, so almost in a year and a half, I think the number is now at 81 lives that have been saved by first responders. Those first responders actually requested to be able to carry naloxone because they were tired of actually arriving on the scene and having someone actually in an overdose situation and watching them die, as opposed to and waiting for the fire department, which has been carrying naloxone for some time. So they requested if they could carry naloxone. They were trained by the Lake County Health Department and have been able to save 81 lives in a very short period of time. And if that's, again, saving lives and helping people, that's a very good reason, I would say, why a young person might want to get engaged in law enforcement today.
Just to kind of add on to that, their motto is serve and protect. And the character of the person that becomes a police officer is because they care about the community. They want to protect those around them. They have the ability, they have the knowledge, and they want to help people, first of all, and then protect them if that becomes necessary. Our police officers do so much good work and goodwill work in our communities, whether it's stopping to play a basketball game with the kids, neighborhood kids, or helping somebody that's their car stalled. There's a variety of things that happen every single day that you rarely ever hear about that the officers do. Good deeds, so to speak, almost like a Boy Scout. And we were talking about Bob being on
That's right.
the scouting program. I'm an Eagle Scout myself, and I believe strongly in those moral values and those characteristics of people, and that's why they're become police officers.
This question is for Congressman Dold. What can you tell us about Lolly's Law and how it is being incorporated into the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act?
Sure. Lolly's Law is named after Alex LaLiberte, who was a Buffalo Grove resident. He was a Stevenson High School student. Was a young man that had a lot of friends, was good at school, played on a number of athletic teams, and really during his sophomore year in college was checked into the hospital for an illness, and they didn't understand what it was. He'd get better, he'd leave the hospital, and then check himself back in. And he was going through withdrawals is what the problem was. He was addicted to prescription drugs and heroin. And just before his finals of his sophomore year, he overdosed and passed away. He was 20. And so Lolly's Law is really designed to make sure that we are putting naloxone and making sure naloxone is accessible in states around the country. And this was a piece of legislation that Alex's sister Chelsea at Live for Lolly, it's an organization that is a local organization, has been pushing to try to educate people about, to try to make sure that this heroin epidemic is very real. It's impacting lives in the 10th District. We are losing one life every 3 days in the collar counties around Chicago. We lose one a day in Chicago. If you take that nationwide, we lose a life every 19 minutes to a prescription drug or a heroin overdose. So again, extremely important. So Lolly's Law was passed by the House of Representatives. It was a piece of legislation that I authored and was passed through the House. The Senate passed a different version, and we are in the process of going to what they call a conference committee to work out that ultimate legislation, which will be voted on and sent to the president's desk for signature. I sit on the conference committee, so my hope is that we're able to get this done, because the longer that we wait, the more lives we know are going to be lost. This is truly an epidemic. And so this is in every high school in our area. And so, it's about education, and we want to make sure that this law, and again, there were 18 different bills that came together in the House version. But we want to make sure that people understand how incredibly important this is. And we were working with stakeholders like NACASA and others, even before federal legislation, to try to make sure that we were bringing prescription drug take-back boxes and have them put in Walgreens across the country. So Walgreens stepped up, so did CVS and others, but Walgreens has agreed to put 500 prescription take-back boxes around the country. In Lake County, we've been able to have prescription take-back boxes in 27 different police departments. We've collected about, on average a year, it's about 12,000 pounds worth of prescription drugs.
And we have one in Round Lake Beach.
And there's one in Round Lake Beach. But I believe, as others as well, believe that if these prescription take-back boxes are at the pharmacies, that we're going to have a lot more cooperation of people turning them in. So not only are they doing that, they're going to hopefully allow prescription or non-prescriptions for naloxone to be offered over the counter. So my hope is that we are a very short time away from being able to have it signed into law by the president.
It's a great improvement having the Walgreens and CVS pharmacies have the returns right there. To have people make a separate stop at a police station right now to drop it off is really out of the way, and if they're going to pick up a prescription, it's a perfect time to drop off something that's old. And I think you'll see a lot more, like you said, probably quadruple what they've taken in so far.
Absolutely. So something that, again, we want to make sure that we're educating the public about.
Yes.
And having Walgreens here as a 10th district company, we certainly were able to bring them to the table, and we were delighted that they agreed to do this. So a big step forward.
Great, thank you.
This question is for both the Congressman and the Mayor. Is the first responder naloxone program achieving the desired results, or is it too early to tell?
Well, I will tell you, the first responder naloxone program, I think 81 lives speaks for itself. I think it is working. I think it is saving lives. And my hope is that what we're doing is those 81 lives that the first responders were able to save is a second chance at recovery. And that's what we're looking for. We want to talk about education. We want to talk about getting the resources there to be able to treat what is a disease, and we do know that addiction is a disease. And so I would say that it is a success. We don't need to wait longer to determine that. And my hope is that you're going to see other counties, other departments take a look at what's happened here in Lake County and say that's something that they're interested in. The other thing that I'll note with regard to a different program beyond the naloxone one is one that was really started by the police force in Mundelein. And what they have done is they're mirroring what happened in Gloucester, Massachusetts. And that's basically going out to the community saying, look, if you are an addict, if you are a user, come into the police station, turn yourself in, turn the paraphernalia in. As opposed to putting you in jail, we're going to put you in treatment. And that, I think there's already been, 6 thus far since that program has rolled out that have stepped up to do that. And so there are some things that are happening right here locally in Lake County that are pretty unique and pretty cutting edge, that are designed really to help people, as opposed to talk about incarcerating folks that we know that this is a disease and they need help.
The Congressman was absolutely right. 81 lives, you can't say anything about that. I mean, that's 81 lives. That's huge. The second phase, as the Congressman also mentioned, is getting treatment. Those people that get saved, oftentimes they get caught a week or two later using drugs again. It's really scary that the mentality isn't there, that you almost died and they're going to go and use again. So if we can get these people into the programs to help them out, and Raleigh Beach has signed on to that program also with the health department, so we're going to be doing that also, our officers. If we get them to the treatment they need and get them to understand how hard it is, because we all know how hard it is when you're on drugs. The addictions are terrible. So and they say with heroin, once you try it once, you're addicted for life. That's how powerful that stuff is. So if we can help those people, young and old, because it's all ranges of life. It's not just kids, it's not just adults, it's not just seniors. There's people all across the spectrum that need the help. And there's a lot of groups out there that will help them. It's going to cost a bit of money, but it's well worth the investment if we can save even more lives in the long term.
Absolutely.
This question's for Congressman Dold.
Sure.
What do you think Congress, what role they should play in gun control in regards to like the recent events in Orlando and the increase of violent crimes in Chicago?
I think Congress has to play a role in this, and certainly it doesn't prevent states and local municipalities from trying to step up and talk about education as well. So when I first came to Congress in 2011, I co-sponsored and worked with Gabby Giffords and others to talk about making sure that that we had universal background checks for those that wanted to purchase weapons. I also sponsored a bill talking about the terrorist watch list, so those that known and suspected terrorists should not be able to purchase a weapon. And then I actually have worked with Congresswoman Debbie Dingell on another piece of legislation talking about zero tolerance for domestic abusers. Again, some common sense pieces of legislation that are tailored to try to ensure that we keep guns out of the hands of the mentally ill, violent felons, or known or suspected terrorists. And those things are important. Just this last Friday, a bipartisan bill, so you're talking about Chicago as well. Robin Kelly, who is a member of Congress in the Chicago area, myself, and 3 other Republicans and 3 other Democrats, actually offered a piece of legislation that is a bipartisan piece of legislation that was worked on in the Senate with Senator Susan Collins, that would talk about if you are on the no-fly list and what they call the selectee list, which is a very narrow list by the FBI and the Department of Justice, that you would not be able to purchase a weapon. But it would also allow individuals that found themselves on that list the ability to have due process. So they would be able to go before a judge within 14 days to plead their case. The government has the burden of proof to determine why they shouldn't be able to purchase a weapon. And it would also, in essence, create an opportunity for those that have been on that list to alert local law enforcement if indeed someone went and purchased a weapon after they were taken off for a select period of time. So this was just introduced on Friday, and so my hope is that, again, we can come together in a bipartisan way, a narrowly tailored way, to try to make sure that we are keeping guns out of those that shouldn't have it.
I would agree. I'm a very strong supporter of the Second Amendment, but at the same point, we can't have people having weapons of that nature that are not capable of using them, especially the mentally ill. You probably all followed it for years now in the papers, how people are seeing psychiatrists and so forth and they go on a rampage. A lot of times those issues weren't reported, and then when they had background checks, and hopefully a lot of the states start tightening that up. That is a big problem, as well as when law enforcement, I think the FBI was contacted several different times on the Orlando situation. One where he was trying to buy body armor, and they didn't have enough information to follow up on it, and they talked to him 2 other times. Somehow or other, he got through their fingers, and that's somehow we need to find a better way of doing that. But I have to support what the congressman said here. We need common sense. There's a lot of gun laws out there right now, and unfortunately, a lot of them aren't enforced fully. And when people are caught with guns, a lot of times they get a little slap on the wrist. And so that's got to really change too. There has to be severe penalties for those that are using guns in crimes, so that it's a kind of a deterrent to other people that are doing it. If you get a slap on the wrist, no big deal. And so you probably also are well aware that gangs use a lot of underage people to use the guns and so forth, because they know they will just get a slap on the wrist because they're underage. They won't have any time served, normally past age 18, sometimes 21. But those are issues that I think we can work on together and with everyone, nonpartisan. So thank you, Congressman, for your work on that.
Congressman Dold, what would you say are the responsibilities of the Ways and Means Committee, and what experience have you gained from that committee?
Well, the Ways and Means Committee is the oldest committee in Congress. Started in 1789, It is seen by most, or by many, as the most powerful committee in the Congress. It deals with all the tax writing that goes on, so all taxes, trade, health care, Social Security, those types of things fall under the jurisdiction of the Ways and Means Committee. And so to be able to be a voice on the Ways and Means Committee for not only the citizens here in the 10th District, but really the greater Chicago area, I think it's an honor to be able to do so. And we're dealing with some really significant issues that are impacting the lives of every single American. And that, I think, is something that is very important, whether it be in terms of our manufacturers, whether it be in terms of our tax code. How do we make it simpler? How to make it fairer? There is a new blueprint that was just coming out on the tax code, trying to make sure that citizens could fill out their taxes on a simplified form as easy as a postcard. So again, this is an idea that's been put out, and again, trying to simplify our tax rate to make sure that we're making it easier for people to comply, make sure that we have a pro-growth tax policy for our businesses and for our communities, which I know is music to the ears of folks like the mayor and others that are looking to try to bring businesses in to places just like Round Lake Beach.
Simplification, absolutely. You looked at years, I mean, the tax code's what, like this thick?
70,000 pages.
Yeah.
70,000 pages.
How can anyone know everything that's in there without constantly looking it up? Or do they have so many computer programs out to help us because we can't do it ourselves? Sure, if you're a high school kid and you're working at McDonald's for the summer, that's one thing. But if you have a job and you have a house and you have other things going on,
sure,
it gets complicated very quickly, and it's so easy to make a mistake that people are terrified dealing with the IRS.
One of the other interesting things I will note with regard to the Ways and Means Committee is that we're really working right now, at least I've been working on some poverty initiatives. And that's one of the things that impacts all of us as we think about poverty. And so worked on an actually piece of legislation accelerating individuals into the workforce, taking people that are currently perhaps on the welfare rolls and trying to get them into a job. And that, I think, is important. So we rolled out a pilot program that passed through committee that's moving forward that would, in essence, provide an opportunity locally for local stakeholders to be able to devise a program where the TANF recipient, the welfare recipient, would be able to get half of their wages paid for by the government, half by the employer. Really an incentive for the employer to say, I'll take a chance on that individual, I'll take a chance on that worker. Because we do know, and they've got to do it for the year, at the end of the year, chances are probably pretty good that they've put some time and investment into training that individual, right? And the chances of them staying are probably going to be pretty darn good. Mm-hmm. So our hope is that that's a win, that we can find out the areas and the things that are working well in certain areas and try to expand them. But the more people that are off of those welfare rolls and working in a good, high-paying job, the better off we're going to be.
America's always been a land of opportunity, and this does give people an opportunity to
Absolutely.
Show what they can do and work hard at it and achieve and improve and get beyond their own then. That's amazing. That's
Absolutely.
Wonderful work.
When it comes to economic development and growing the economy, infrastructure holds an essential role. As one of the building blocks of any municipality, investments into infrastructure cannot be overlooked. With large federal and state budget deficits, how can local governments ensure that proper funding is provided to these communities?
Well, I think the mayor should just take over all the government. We'll all be better off. So, no, we don't rely on the state and federal government for a lot of things. We do get some money passed through, which we appreciate for some major arterials. The state takes care of Route 83 and some other major roads like that. And we rely on the county quite a bit for most of our arterials. Cedar Lake Road, Rollins Road, Fairfield, Haynesville. They take care of all those. And they have a funding source that's dedicated for that. Certain sales tax is added on in town and all throughout Lake County here. So they've been able to achieve quite a bit. And we have what they call the motor fuel tax, which is collected when people buy gasoline, goes to the state, and every community in the state of Illinois gets a rebate from the state based on your population, so many dollars per population. I think it's around $25 a person right now. And we use that for most of our road work. Round Lake Beach has been very fortunate. We've grown quite a bit economically recently. And because we've been able to do that and keep our costs low, we're able to issue a $5 million bond this spring and do a lot of road work on that. And we expect to issue a bond every 3 to 5 years, about $5 million to continue that process throughout town. So again, while the state is having big issues, and I hope to get through that, that's important to all of us, it's not really going to affect us too much as far as the roads. And the federal government, probably even less. We don't have Illinois 94 running through our town or anything else like that. But the congressman, I'm sure, has.
Yeah. No, I mean, when it comes to infrastructure, and that's really critical. Infrastructure, so necessary at every level. And you're hearing from the mayor about some of the roads that they're in charge of and where they get some of that funding. But we live in the 4th largest manufacturing congressional district in the entire country. How do we get our raw materials in? How do we get our finished product out? How do we move people around? That's all regarding our infrastructure. For the first time in a decade, the United States Congress came up with a long-term surface transportation bill, meaning a road bill that also helped with our mass transit. $305 billion over 5 years, of which Illinois will be the 4th largest recipient of those resources. And if you look at a map, there's a reason why. Right? You look at the roads that come into the Chicago area. You look at the rail, the waterways, all those types of things. We are a hub in terms of our infrastructure. Right? A quarter of all the freight in the entire nation comes through the Chicago terminal. Right? That's basically the general gist of the spread out area if you look at that map. And so we want to ensure that those dollars continue to come. The motor fuel tax, as the mayor pointed out before, there's state motor fuel tax, there's federal motor fuel tax, and we need to ensure that those dollars are going back into the roads. What we see right now is this dysfunction in the state of Illinois is going to stop road projects around the state. They're going to prevent federal dollars from flowing through to many of these projects because they can't get their act together. That is going to cost us more money. They're going to stop projects, and they're going to have to start them up again. That means the crews that are working on those projects are going to stop and have to restart again. And so, I certainly have been working and trying to implore them to get through this process to make sure that these projects don't stop. It would be far more cost effective to finish these projects than to stop them. And again, we have to recognize at the end of the day, these are your dollars. Whether they're coming from the state or the federal government, in essence, they're your tax dollars. And we have to recognize that you want these projects done. And these are for you to be able to not only get around, but to be able to conduct your business and the like. And it's about economic development. It's all those types of things as we talk about our infrastructure, which is why I've been such a huge champion of infrastructure spending and making sure that those dollars are going right back into our community. Now, the debts and the deficit that you talk about are certainly significant, but when we talk about our infrastructure, those are dollars that, again, the Highway Trust Fund is coming from the motor fuel tax is designed to go directly back into those roads. You're paying those user fees right now.
This question is for Congressman Dold. How will increasing the federal deficit affect funding for infrastructure projects?
Well, if you're increasing the federal deficit and ultimately the debt, which is the bigger concern, is really the debt. I mean, right now we're at about a $19 trillion debt, which is astonishing. And we have to focus on how can we grow, how can we bring that debt down. That debt is over doubled in the last decade. And that is a real problem because what it's doing, and when I ask, oftentimes I'll spend some time, I know we've got some educators in the room, I'll go to schools and I'll ask the young people, why do you care? I say, because ultimately we get around to the point that they're the ones that are going to have to pay down the debt. And therefore, there are things that we can't do because we have to pay down the debt. Because almost one of the first payments that comes out of the government is going to be the debt obligation payment. And so we will pay the debt first. With regard to our infrastructure, though, in terms of our roads, that's almost in a separate fund. Right? So what happens with the motor fuel tax, that goes into a separate fund that you get to pay. That goes back into the roads and actually into some of the mass transit, but it's still at about a $13 billion annual shortfall. And so that's one of the things that's a concern as you look at the debt and the deficit. And if it continues to rise, where do we get those resources from? So that's the issue.
Yeah, I think part of the problem with the funding is actually that we've improved the mileage on vehicles.
Yeah.
People aren't using as much gas, they aren't paying as much gas tax, so the road fund goes down, although we're doing something that's very worthy, and it's helping the environment. but there's a negative associated with that. So that's something that unfortunately wasn't set up many years ago with that forethought that maybe as it increased 5%, the gas tax would increase 5%. Not that I want to increase taxes, but in certain circumstances there has to be a funding source that's reliable and that's there, especially when you're dealing with the whole United States. That's pretty significant.
This question is for both the congressman and the mayor. As communities age, structural damage caused by natural events can be common occurrence. Municipalities who suffer from these events may lack the funding necessary to conduct mitigation projects to prevent future disasters. What do you think is the most effective process for allocating aid to these areas, and should municipalities be able to receive federal funds directly rather than having them pass through the Senate?
Well, I certainly think we should receive them directly. The state, whenever they get involved, they tend to either pull a little bit to the side for themselves, or you have to jump through 15 different hoops to actually get the funding and get it appropriated properly. And you spend so much money doing all that stuff. Sometimes it's necessary to a certain degree. You have to be able to show what you spend it for, how you spend it, so it's spent properly. But many times the amount of red tape is significant, and that needs to be cut back, especially when you're dealing with disasters. At the same time, I think it's important that some large oversight is out there. A lot of communities are very small. They don't have the wherewithal or the know-how to handle natural disasters. Most of us are part of different groups that work together to solve natural disasters, not just the one individual community. We've had drills in our area that deals with the whole Round Lake area in Haynesville. You know, whether it's be a train derailment or a tornado coming through town, how do we handle it? Who do we call? And we'll go to the fire department. We have the special lines set up over there for the operations center, and go through test drills to find out how well we do. And I'd like to say that we've done pretty well. So, Congressman?
Congratulations on that. That's good. No, remember back to the questions we asked earlier. Why would anybody want to be a first responder? Right? Police department, fire department. And obviously in situations where you have disasters like this, the community needs your help. And so as we look at funding sources, should we be able to fund directly into a municipality? Well, that has been, in essence, taken away. And so what we are doing right now is we're funding, depending on what the particular situation is, through the state. So the federal government will fund those things that will go through the state, and as the mayor pointed out, sometimes that can be a little bit of a problem at times. But ultimately, when you're looking at how do we do it, there are organizations that are designed to come together to help react. Organizations like MABIS, for instance, with regard to fire departments that are designed specifically for those types of disasters, to be able to respond quickly, and to be able to pool those resources together so that actually those dollars can stretch much further. So that those specialized pieces of equipment or the ability to respond, because you don't all need to have, each municipality doesn't need to have that piece of equipment, right, but the area having that piece of equipment is extremely helpful.
Congressman Dold, what do you believe will be the impact on job creation and business expansion of the raising of the federal minimum wage to $15?
Well, I mean, as we look at raising the minimum wage, I think that we do need to raise the minimum wage. The question is to what extent? And frankly, one of the things that most people look at is it's the federal minimum wage. Now, the state of Illinois has had a minimum wage that's higher than the federal minimum wage for quite some time. The federal minimum wage has to go to the minimum wage for the country. So we've got to think about some areas in Mississippi or Montana as opposed to Chicago. And so, I don't know that we're going to, what that rate's going to be, but one of the things that we have to look at with regard to minimum wage is how is it impacting young people coming out looking for their first job? And again, we want to make sure that we're talking about job growth and job creation, and we want to make sure they have good, high-paying careers. And ultimately, that should be our goals. We focus on good, high-paying careers. How do we attract those businesses to come back? And that's creating an economic environment here. We have all the assets right here, right? All the assets right here in Round Lake Beach, right? To be attracting those businesses. It's a great place to raise a family, some good schools, right? In terms of our infrastructure, right? Look at that map. We have some really fantastic assets. And so we know businesses that are picking up and leaving. They're going to Wisconsin and Indiana, and we know they're not going over there, Mayor, because of the weather. right? So we have to create that business-friendly environment here, and ultimately we're going to see wages grow, we're going to see jobs grow, and that needs to be our goal, to help reduce, tax burdens on hardworking, taxpayers right here in Round Lake Beach.
The minimum wage is, most people understand, is for entry-level positions where people really don't have any job skills yet. They're coming into the workforce and they're going to gain some job skills. And if they're good at what they do, they can move up in the company or they can find other jobs then because they've gained more skills. Education is key to getting a good job. It's unfortunate to see so many people drop out of high school and then eventually some will go back and get their degree through the GED, but they really hurt themselves by doing that. The education allows people to get very good jobs. Whether you look at all you guys right now, you're all in school, you're all here doing internships, and you're setting yourselves on a very good path. If you don't have an education, though, it's hard to walk in and get a good job. There's very few out there. Not like it used to be, 40, 50 years ago, where you could do manufacturing and they were everywhere, and you'd have a decent job. You didn't need a big education, but you had to have good faculties. But that's one thing we have to remember, and as Bob said, the federal minimum wage is across the whole country. You have different pockets and different wages, different standards of living. Cost of livings are greatly different. Chicago could be double what it costs to live in some other parts of Illinois even. So you have to be very careful when you're calling for a federal minimum wage versus state by state. What are we, $8.25 per hour in Illinois? I think federal $7.35, $7.35.
Yeah,
but it's almost a $1 difference. And those things should be probably based on inflation annually to see a little kick up in there. It's unfortunate when the Congress has to keep on go back and rehash that issue time and time again. Just like Social Security is kind of based on that also. You see increases based on what the cost of living increases are. And that makes it, I think, a lot easier for everyone once you get something in place.
We have about 5 more minutes left for this before we talk about other questions. So the panel has 2 more final questions for you, if that's okay.
I'll try to keep it short.
Congressman Dold, why would a young person want to run for political office when they see such discourse in today's political environment?
Because we need you. We need good people to run for office. And you know what? I have some very dear friends on the other side of the aisle, and you know what? The political discourse that people see, again, is not necessarily the true case of what's going on. And I look at this Congress, for instance, and while most people watching or most people here, if I asked you, is Congress working, would probably say no, not a chance. And there is a lot more work to be done, no question about it. And it needs to be more efficient, effective, and accountable to you. But if you look at what we were able to do just in this Congress, for the first time in 17 years, we figured out a way to pay doctors that take care of seniors. For the first time in 14 years, we have an education bill because we heard from parents and others that said, we want to have more control. So we take power away from the federal government, giving it to local school boards and parents. First time in 14 years. First time in a decade, we have a long-term surface transportation bill. We actually did some tax extenders in terms of trying to make things permanent, whether it be the research and development tax credit, or the child tax credit, or the earned income tax credit, or how small businesses expense equipment. Those are all things that we've been made permanent. We did things like the customs bill and others, but the long and the short of it is, any one of those pieces of legislation are pretty big pieces of legislation. And I'll go back and say we've got lots more work to be done, but why a young person would want to get involved in politics? Look at the mayor, right? Look at what he is able, and the team that he has assembled is able to do right here in Round Lake Beach. Look at what you might want to do, right? In terms of state politics, local politics, federal politics, right? Ultimately, we're as strong as our community and the voice that we send, to represent us. And that's why we need good people. So why should you do it? Because it's worth fighting for. And if you don't do it, who else is, right? Okay.
I would respond too, but I can't beat that one. That was a great answer. Thank you.
All right, and this question is for both Congressman Dold and Mayor Hill. What do you believe are the biggest challenges in the 10th District and Village?
Finish the answer or the question again?
The biggest challenges facing the village.
In general? Okay. Boy, some of the biggest challenges that we face right now, I think, are the discord that we're having, as somebody mentioned earlier. A lot of discord out there as far as politics and what's happening, the information we get. The state of Illinois is our biggest issue, as the Congressman said several times. If they don't get their act together, we're going to see a lot of disruption of services in our whole state. Even prisons right now aren't being funded after July 1st. I don't think those guys are going to walk off the job, but they haven't gotten any pass-through money for that yet either. So that's probably our number one issue. That's not so much a federal issue, but I know the Congressman and myself both talked to many people downstate trying to get this thing fixed and let them know how we feel about it and how important it is to our residents. I think the state of Illinois also has to change some of the employment rules. If they don't get on the same page as many other states near us, again, the Congressman mentioned earlier, we're seeing people leave our state that are the job makers, the job creators. And if they leave, they take the jobs with them. And if we don't make it fair here for those people to have a business and operate fairly, they're not going to come back. And we're going to keep seeing more and more leaving. Sure, there's certain businesses that can't leave, like a lot of the retailers. They have to be where the people are. They're not going to pick up a leave. Manufacturers, absolutely, and those are some of the better jobs. Research and development, same thing. I think years ago when they changed the rule on the trucking companies, you saw 4 or 5 companies move out that took thousands of trucks with them at the same time. And sometimes you look for that small gain and you actually hurt yourself much worse by increasing those taxes. It's been said many times. You lower the tax, give people incentive to work on it hard, and you're going to see everyone rise. You're going to see the tax revenue rise instead of drop, even though you lower the rates. That's kind of getting off a different tangent, but
I don't disagree. From the 10th district perspective, the biggest issues facing the 10th district, the 10th district obviously has there's a number of people that are concerned, obviously, at what's happening abroad, safety and security, and what's happening there, and as we see kind of the rise of ISIS and what they're able to do. So again, leadership, global leadership, and the leadership from the United States is certainly a concern. Jobs in the economy still is the number one issue on people's minds in terms of how are we going to make sure that more of these people are able to go to work. Now, listen, if you ask and you look at the statistics, they say our unemployment rate's at around 5%. We all know that that's not the real rate, right? That's saying that it's not counting those that have left the roles, those that are no longer seeking, and so there are pockets in areas in Round Lake Beach that, again, unemployment rate is much higher than that 5%. And so again, jobs in the economy still is number one, and there's a whole set of issues around that. For me, education is something that I'm very passionate about. I hear about it all the time. It's the building blocks for everything that we want to do. And so the opportunity to make sure people have that foundation to be able to then go achieve their dreams is absolutely critical. And then we talked about it earlier, the epidemic that we have with prescription drugs and heroin is certainly something that's keeping a lot of people up at night in and around the 10th district. But, those are just a handful of things that we're trying to deal with, but there's a bunch more.
We do have a few questions that we'd like to ask from the audience tonight. We've agreed to wrap up at around 7:30, so I'm going to try to get as many questions in as I can. The first couple of questions are from Nancy Radford and Nikasa. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. The first question would be, we see on social media that many voters don't think government works. What would you do to fix the underlying structures and systems that seem to be broken?
Okay. I would say that certainly local government is working. I think most people would agree with that. They get to see Rich at the grocery store or at the hardware store or wherever. And in terms of the federal government, what I would say is, in terms of, is it working? Social media says it's not working. It's difficult. And honestly, that's really the problem. It's not that it's not working, it's just that right now we've created a situation where it makes it that much more difficult to get things done. And I ultimately believe that we agree on a lot more than we disagree on. And trying to get things done to make it easier for the entrepreneur to be able to hire that individual, to make it easier for someone to be able to move forward, to be able to get that education. Those are things that frankly we need to be focused on. So social media talks about the dysfunction largely because nobody likes to talk about the things that actually do work. And we talked a little bit about some of the things that actually did pass with broad bipartisan support, whether it be the education bill or transportation or how we're taking care of seniors. Those are things that, again, most people say, okay, we've got to take care of those. But again, broad bipartisan support on pro-growth policies, whether it be talking about research and development or the ability for small businesses to be able to purchase and expense equipment, or for the earned income tax credit to make sure that there's more dollars in the pockets of hardworking families. So part of that, we have to do a better job, whether it be on social media or others, of talking about the things that have been done in a bipartisan basis.
One of the big problems, though, is that a lot of those issues that the Congressman just brought up are boring. People don't want to sit there and hear about, oh, that was not a big deal. They want to see the
They don't splash on social media.
And that's social media especially. If it's not sensationalized, people won't always stop and look at it and watch it, and that's a shame because there's so much good happening out there that is behind the scenes. You don't see it on the national TV shows, you don't read about the paper very often. It's not covered the same way anything sensational happens, and that's really a shame. So if they can get our news media, first of all, to be redirect more towards the important issues and not the sensational issues, I think it will be a lot better off.
As a teen court juror, I see the benefit of a restorative justice program for both myself and the community. Why is it that this program isn't eligible for any funding from either the state or federal government? And because it is a not-for-profit agencies that currently support teen court, if the state does not pass a budget, how will teen court be impacted?
I think the biggest impact that, first of all, thank you ladies for participating in teen court. Very important. I hope you find it rewarding. Obviously, the funding right now that you all get for teen court and the like is coming from nonprofit agencies that are being impacted by the budget impasse in Illinois. And we see a lot of these organizations that are doing incredible work that are having to shut their doors because they don't have the resources to get by. And that's really a travesty because many of these organizations are actually able to stretch those dollars much further than the government would ever be able to do so. So that's one way that it would be impacted. In terms of the ability to get resources, I'm sure that there are some grants out there. But the problem is that the expertise to write the grants and all that sort of stuff takes a lot of time, effort, and energy to be able to do so either from the state or the federal government. But certainly I would welcome the opportunity to work with you guys to try to figure out, again, how this very important program can stay afloat and alive going on in the future.
And we all know what NICAS has done. Teen Court's been part of Round Lake Beach for many years now, and having the students step up, to serve on those teen courts is amazing. They learn so much, and they help their community. They help the other kids that they deal with, the students, and we have your own peers judging you and telling you, that's wrong, don't do this again, this is what you need to get on the right track here and help you out. That can turn lives around, and it has turned lives around. And again, for the small expense that we have on a teen court, the money they save in recidivism later on and people walking the straight and narrow rather than going down a path of violence or crime, you can't weigh that. It's just
absolutely.
So I hope they will come to a resolution. I wish I had more I could help you out with there. I know the villages did step up and help out with the teen court funding a little bit to make them get through the end of the year at least, and hopefully we'll see some movement before that point.
With the lack of funding for public education, it becomes difficult for districts to provide the best possible education for students. How would you propose a way to find additional funding without actually spending more money?
Well, let me tell you about one of the things that I've done that I think is important, that was really driven from local educators right here in Round Lake Beach, or at least in the Round Lake area. So I have an educational advisory board that is comprised of superintendents and principals and teachers and union members and school board members and other concerned parents. And it was brought to my attention that Illinois, one of the only states the only state in the country that I've been able to find that does this, if you use federal dollars to hire a teacher, the state takes 36%. Illinois takes 36% right off the top. You say, well, why are they taking 36%? They're taking 36% to pay past pension obligations. Now, we certainly understand the need to pay current pension obligations. That's why name of the game, you've got to do that. But what's interesting is that those federal funds, those Title I dollars, go to the most needy schools. The most needy schools get more funding than others. It's meant to try to level the playing field as best it can. And so what's happening in Illinois is that they are punishing the most needy schools. And what some schools, like the high school, Don Mendoza and the like, said, look, we understand we're not going to hire the teacher because we get 36% more that we can put into whiteboards or other things like that, which we desperately need as well. And we just get our dollars, that many more dollars that we can spend on those things. But what it means for other districts, in Round Lake, by the way, if my legislation had passed, which said you cannot use dollars to pay past pension obligations, Round Lake High School would have been able to hire 6 additional teachers last year. Now, whether they need to hire 6 teachers or don't need to hire six teachers, frankly, that's up to the school board and to the parents and to the administrators there. We need to give them more flexibility, not less. And ultimately, how this impacts other districts, $700,000 out of District 60, which is right down the road. Now, for them, that's the difference between being able to offer all-day kindergarten or none. Right? That's just because of this law that has been in place since the Blagojevich administration. So the piece of legislation that I offered in the education bill, which passed the House unanimously, because nobody could understand why in the world Illinois was doing this, got stripped out in the United States Senate, in their Senate version, so it is not part of the current legislation. But I feel so strongly about this, we offered up this legislation as a standalone piece of legislation going forward because we do not believe that you should be using, Title I dollars to pay fiscal mismanagement in the state of Illinois over decades. And frankly, to do it and hurt the neediest children is absolutely unacceptable.
And I took the time to share, there's a nice article about the congressman and what he's done with all this recently. I shared it with the governor's office earlier this week, and they're looking into also more about it. They were aware of it, but not to the impact that it's really having at that point. Unfortunately, a lot of the people that really work that directly are busy with the budget right now trying to get a resolution, so they will probably look at that a little closer come July. Hopefully we'll have a resolution before then, although it doesn't seem likely at this point, but hopefully they will. Other than that, a lot of the schools have done like a lot of the communities have had to do. As things got tighter, we got tighter. We got leaner, we got meaner. We refocused our resources. We stopped doing things that were, it was nice to do, but it wasn't as necessary and as important as some of the other things, like teaching the kids. Number one, you can't cut money out of that. There's other, could be little frills, or it could be, I'll let the school board decide what they should and should remove out of there. But they've all done a very good job in most cases trying to narrow things down and refocus their resources where it's needed the most. So I applaud them for that. It's one of those jobs that's very thankless in many ways.
We have time for one last question, and then we're going to have to wrap it up, and we'll go from there. Possibly there may be some interaction afterwards if we get done on time, all right? One last question.
Okay, this last question is from Nikasa. We have seen a lot of bullying going on in our communities and our schools. Is there any legislation currently being considered that will help with the protection of students from bullying and harassment on all levels, including cyberbullying?
I don't know of any legislation that's going on currently with regard to it. I am part of the bullying caucus, again, in Congress, which is designed to help educate those about bullying, cyberbullying, and the like. And ultimately, my hope is that this is pushed down to the local level where education is happening in the schools and by parents about what's going on. This is obviously an issue and a concern for parents all around the 10th District, but I would argue it's all around the country. And it's not necessarily, I don't think is necessarily federal legislation, but it's a lot about education and understanding what bullying is and how it impacts people. And that is something that I believe strongly we have to step up and make sure that young people know what's going on with that and the impact that it has on their peers. Because it's a lot easier to do those things via text as opposed to what I would remember as face-to-face. It's a little harder to do it face-to-face than it is on an anonymous text or on somebody's Facebook page or those types of things. And it can have catastrophic implications, which again comes back down to making sure we're educating the young people about what it is that they're doing and how it is impacting other young people in their community.
Bullying's been going on since I was a kid, and probably way before then too. But it's gotten much easier, as the Congressman just said, with social media nowadays and the texting and everything else. There's so many more ways to do this where you're kind of behind the scenes, you have to be out in front of the person, so more people are apt to do it than ever before. Another big problem I've seen is sometimes the parents. They actually support the children when their children are wrong. And it confounds me why they would possibly do that instead of trying to help set their child straight and teach them a lesson at the same time, a learning lesson, a lifetime learning lesson on how to treat other people. And you've seen it so many times where the parents will either be in a fight with the kids in the playground or other odd things like that. If we could get the parents to take more of a role in educating their children, stopping the bullying, I think we'll go a long way. Now, how we do that I don't know.
Thank you, Congressman Dold, Mayor Hill. I'm sorry if we couldn't get to all the questions. I know Mayor Hill may be around for a few moments, possibly Congressman Dold. Thank you very much, everybody, and good night.
Thank you. No, thank you so much.
Congressman, thank you.
Great to see you. Thanks so much for doing it.